Hello, everybody. Welcome to Frank Family Vineyard's first virtual tasting. I'm Leslie Frank, and joining us today to walk us through some wines, 3 wines, is our winemaker and general manager, Todd Graff, and our very special guest, someone that many of you out there have met before, founder of Frank Family Vineyards, owner of Frank Family Vineyards, and my lovely husband, Richard Frank. So welcome, everyone. Todd, I'm going to pass it to you to talk about what we're tasting today, and I know we're starting with my favorite, the Chardonnay.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. I hope your families and yourselves are all safe and healthy. That's Rich, I'm Todd, just in case. But welcome. This is our first time we've done this, so I hope it's going to be fun and informative and interactive. So please join in when you can. Don't put too much pressure on the bottles you have. Just go get a nice bottle of wine if that's what you have and open it. If you have all 3, that's great. We appreciate that. But feel free to grab any wine. I'm going to try to discuss winemaking more general terms, so it'll fit in with whatever you decide to pick on. So
and this only works if you ask questions online that Leslie will then forward to us, so that we make sure we're hitting all the points that you all want to discuss.
That's right, Rich. Todd, I'm just going to let the viewers know that we're doing this, as you know, on the Zoom platform. So in order to ask questions, look at the bottom. You'll see the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. You can type us questions. We can monitor those as they come in, or you can direct message us through the chat feature at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer your questions as they come up on air.
Great.
Well, Saturday, noon here in California, little drizzly day in the Napa Valley, not much rain. We're about 50% of our total rainfall for the year, so it doesn't look like we're going to get to 100% of an average year. Next week is supposed to have typical spring weather, getting into the 70s, but this weekend we're supposed to get a little bit of rain, and it's a little drizzly, or otherwise we'd be outside. Bud break is going on in the Chardonnay vineyards, the Pinot Noir vineyards, just touching base now in the Cabernet vineyards of Rutherford. We're sitting here in the Frank's Party Barn, so hopefully you can see how fun this is. And right outside are the Winston Hill Vineyards. We're going to discuss the Napa tier wines today, and we're going to start with the Chardonnay. And as most of you know, the Napa Valley is a long, narrow valley that runs semi north to south, but little angled. And then the Sonoma Valley runs opposite over the Vaca Mountains, over the Mayacama Mountains. And the Carneros is kind of the bottom of it, of the U that connects the 2 valleys going up. And that's where we're going to talk about the Chard and the Pinot. These are 2 siblings. Chardonnay is probably our largest seller, the biggest blend we make. We own 80 acres down in Carneros, so that's the foundation of this wine. We also work with some great growers, and we've had long-term relationships. Lee Hudson and Carneros, the Beckstoffer family, the San Giacomo family, several smaller growers, and plus our vineyard make up this blend. Once we do everything we can in the vineyard, the growing season, which is just starting now, it's our job to really do the best we can in the winery. We try to pick at night when the temperature's the coolest and the grapes are cool, press all day, start it again tomorrow. For this wine, we're drinking now the 18 Carneros blend. There's probably about 40 different vineyard blocks that make up that wine. So during the year after fermentation, that's our job, is kind of shepherd this wine to a blend, to the bottle, and hopefully something you guys really enjoy. Harvest is our crazy season, as you probably all know or have heard. This wine was picked starting at the beginning of September in 2018, and finished about the end. So it was about a month process for the harvest. 2018 was a great vintage. California, Napa Valley, we're pretty spoiled, admittedly. We usually have very good weather, and 18 was this average weather year, not too hot, not too cool. And it's one thing we want to be average at, it's our weather. So it's not too extreme. And 18 was a great year. Mother Nature was very generous also. So we had lots of fruit. We started Chardonnay in September, and it was a little later, it went all the way to mid-November with the Cabernet. And thank goodness we had great weather, or we wouldn't have been able to cram all the fruit into the season if we didn't have a long, nice season. So Chardonnay, we barrel ferment everything. Pressing is, let's start there. We're gonna follow the grape from the vineyard to the bottle, I hope. And if I get online, that's what Rich and Leslie will rein me in. We're picking at night, we're pressing the juice. We do 3 press cuts. I don't want to get too detailed, but we do a lot of champagne method in our pressing. I spend a lot of time making sparkling wines, and I'm a fan of that pressing philosophy. So we actually take the first 10 gallons per ton, which is really full of kind of the vineyard dust and a little bit of the juice that's been slopped around in the bins, and we take that and we separate it. Then about the next 100 to 140 gallons per ton, we call that the free run, and that just goes in by itself. And then the heavy pressing, we combine back that first 10, and that's our heavy press. And that has more of the stringent components, phenolics, and we'll deal with that separately. But the juice right in the middle of the pressing is right where we want to be, the heart of the juice. We ferment everything in barrels. We can talk about barrels all day long. So if you have questions about barrels, we're a French oak house. So all our oak is from France. The majority of the reason there is it's a little more delicate than other oaks, and I like that. It enhances the fruit versus dominate, and that's the goal here with our style of wine. Fermentation can take anywhere up to 2 months or longer. Ideally, it happens in a few weeks, but it can keep going on and on. And this time it's still in the barrels. We're stirring the barrels, mixing them up on a weekly basis to add richness to the wines. They're going to, after primary fermentation, which is the process of the yeast converting all the sugar to alcohol. It's as simple as that. We're just trying to get the booze in right now in the wine. And
why do you do it in the barrel?
Great.
As opposed to in a big tank?
Great. So the barrels add a lot of complexity. They'll add texture, richness, aromatics. Stainless steel, big tank, is neutral. And so that's a great method for some people also, but the barrels add a lot more complexity. And again, richness. And we talk about aromatics and maybe flavors, but when you're tasting today, keep a mind on the texture of the wine. It's something we really work hard for. So we really enjoy that texture. And I hope you're drinking as I'm talking, because you're going to need it, I think. So barrels, we get to a point where we have to make a decision if we should induce another bacteria fermentation called malolactic. Not all wines do it. Not all wines need to do it. We choose to do a partial. If the vineyards, which typically in Carneros have very high acidities and low pHs, will induce the malolactic, which rounds the wines out. It takes the malic acid, which you would all know as the hard green apple acid, and turns it into a more creamy dairy acid. So that's where we're getting some texture, some creaminess from that wine by doing that. But if the wine has low acidity and a high pH, we don't want to get it too fat. So we'll avoid it for those wines. And then thus, this is a big blend. This wine sits in those barrels for about 9 months. And of those barrels, it's 100% barrel fermented, but of those barrels, 1/3 are new every vintage. 1/3 are once used, 1/3 are twice used. And here's where we're trying to get our family style of balance, where we're not trying to dominate the wine with the oak. And usually with the stronger fruit, we can add a little more oak at times. But that's our rule of thumb, is about a third new every vintage, but 100% barrel fermented. And I think as you smell this, you'll get some spice and some caramel, but you won't get a heavy oak aroma.
Yeah, I think the key thing that Todd mentioned there and takes a lot of time and effort to do, but is different, is that we do pick each lot and decide if we're going to need malolactic fermentation on that lot. It sounds good when people say we do 100% malolactic fermentation. That's actually easier than actually picking each lot and making sure that you know how it's going to blend together. And it's more into winemaking as opposed to just big bulk winemaking. The other thing I think you maybe talk about is how we try to keep similarity from year to year.
Great. So the consistency is one, we're lucky, again, being in Napa, that Mother Nature deals us a pretty good hand most vintages. But what it also comes back to working with the same growers year in and year out. Same winemaking team. It's, winemaking it's about fruit, but it's about people also. So we have the same people every year making the wine, growing the grapes, and making the decisions. And and it becomes a philosophy and our family style. And we aim that arrow at the bullseye, and that's our style. So we try to be there all the time. The hardest decision I have and our winemaking team is making a picking decision, because once you make that decision, you can't glue it back on if you're wrong. And it's very easy to pick too early, and it's very easy to pick too late.
What happens if you do each of those?
Well, you probably don't have a job long. No. So think of it as the apple tree in your backyard. You go out and bite it and it's hard as a rock, it's too early. You come back after a vacation and they're all on the ground rotten, you're too late. It's when you can bite that apple and the juice goes all over your cheeks, then you've nailed it. Now, we've got several thousand acres to be walking and making that decision. So that's our hardest decision come harvest time, is when to pick properly to maintain, to have this nice fruit that I think this wine shows, the nice acidity and the balance of the wine. And again, I hope you'll see in all these wines that our family style is balanced, and the typicity, the Chardonnay tastes like Chardonnay, Pinot Noir tastes like Pinot Noir, and Cabernet like Cabernet. So they all taste different, but they're all typical of the variety and all very typical of our region, Carneros in the Napa Valley.
We're going to have Leslie ask questions, but I have one more, which I think people ask about all. Why don't you talk about acid in wine in general?
Sure. I like to work with acid, fruit, or oak balance. Acid is the freshness, the energy of the wine, what gives it length and taste. You've all had orange juice, so that has a lot of acid in it. This wine, we have a little more fruit and body in it to balance that out, but the acid just gives it that nice length, freshness, ageability, all things that I'm really looking for in our wines.
Leslie, you have any?
Yes, I have a viewer question here. Someone is asking, they say their 2018s have not arrived yet. Is the 2017 Carneros Chardonnay a reasonable stand-in?
Great. Yes, it definitely is. It alludes a little bit to what Rich was talking about earlier, the consistency. 17 was a very different growing year. Mother Nature changed her mind in 17, but what we do in the winery kind of tries to balance that out also. So I think those wines are pretty comparable. Again, it goes back to that philosophy. So as long as you have a philosophy and a target to aim for, a roadmap, you got to get to New York by a certain day. That doesn't mean you have to take a certain road every time. There's plenty of roads to take to get to New York. So that's kind of what winemaking is. Make sure you have your map ready, and then when road's closed, you can go a different way. And 17 was a very different year than 18. but I think the wines are very comparable in style. So yeah, they'd be perfect. And again, I want to stress, if you're at home watching this, first of all, thank you. And second of all, if you don't have these wines, just open something and enjoy it. I mean, on the East Coast, it's 3 o'clock. Hopefully you're starting to think what you're having for dinner. And here we're getting ready to think what we're having for lunch. So it's a good time to open a bottle of wine.
We'll talk about seven. Just remember, a meal without wine is called breakfast.
But then it's champagne.
That's true.
Or sparkling wine.
I'll talk more about the 17 vintage, which was basically two different vintages, one before the fire here in Napa and one after, and affected different grapes different way. The Chardonnays from everybody here and the Pinots were not affected at all because they were all picked prior to the fires in October. But I'll touch on that when we get to the Cabernet. Want to go again, Leslie?
So so when you're tasting wines, don't get caught up into if you get apple or pear or banana or pineapple. If you're just starting out, maybe just get into, do I get fruit? Fruit, all kinds of fruit. Do you like that? Can you tell the acidity, that length that keeps going? Can you get the richness, the texture? Can you smell some spice? With oak, you get spice. You can get vanilla. You can get smoke. You can get some richness out of that. You should be able to taste those. Just start broad. If you've been tasting a lot and you're very good at this, then go into the detail. But I think if we want to get anything across today, it's enjoyment. And so don't overthink this.
Try this at home.
Todd, this is a question from Gary Bilo.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. This is a question from Gary Bilo. He's asking, is your new to neutral oak ratio held across your Chardonnay labels? For example, he loves the Lewis Vineyard Chardonnay.
Yeah, so great question. And no, it's not held across labels. The Lewis Chardonnay is our vineyard designate from our property, and it comes from two knolls on the Carneros property, and we farm it for reserve from the beginning. We pay special attention to the crop load. That gets actually 100% new French oak every vintage. And the best compliment I get on that wine usually is somebody says, is there any new oak in here? And I say, great. So if the fruit is strong, it can handle new oak. If it's not strong, you should tone it back a little bit. And so kind of conversely, what you think, I'll build this up with some new oak, but it's putting a bit heavy backpack on a little kid and they can't make the hike. So the Lewis is 100% new. We also now do for the wine club, which I'm sure many of you are members, a San Giacomo and a Beckstoffer vineyard designate Chardonnay. The Beckstoffer is about 50% new oak, and the San Giacomo's closer to the 33 range. I'm trying to just show what the vineyard does, and I'm trying to show the fruit more than the oak in those wines.
I was going to say before when I interrupted Leslie, those of you who have been at the winery, we've done this before, but some of you may not have been. If you just take a little bit of the wine and sip it, and then turn your head down a little bit and leave your lips a little open, you see how fast saliva accumulates in your mouth. And the quicker it does, the more acid there's in the wine. So take a second and just try that. And then you'll try it on the other wines that we do. And you'll see how important it is in the wines. But it gives you a good idea of how much acid is really in the wine.
So Michael Cardoza is asking, what is the difference, Todd, between the Chardonnay that you make and other Californian Chardonnays?
Is that a softball, Michael?
The quick answer is ours is better, but
yeah,
you can go
on. No, honestly, the funny joke, if there was 10 winemakers on a panel here, we'd all have 10 opinions. So back to that roadmap, there's a lot of ways to get to the end point. What's different, what we know for facts anyway, we're Carneros based. We're, you know, we are Carneros, both Napa and Sonoma. It's about 75% and a little over 75% Napa side, 25% approximately on the Sonoma side, but it's Carneros. That doesn't matter much. So there, it's the barrel regime, it's the winemaking, our style. Everybody should have a style, and you either like that style or not. You know, there's different regions that grow grapes. I mean, grapes are grown all over the world, so find that region you like.
Well, the point is that Chardonnay is probably grown in more regions around the world than almost any other grape, but it's called something different in many areas, and it tastes different. And what are some of the reasons that happens? I mean,
Sure.
versus Carneros.
Sure. So Chardonnay got its start in Burgundy in France. So in the northern part of Burgundy is the Chablis region, a little cooler, and just north of that is Champagne. And then below Chablis is Burgundy. And that's the start of this and the world classics. But heck, Australia, the Margaret River is making great Chardonnay. Everybody, there's great Chardonnays made there. Oregon's doing a great job. Everywhere in California does a great job. It's really, it's enjoy the experience of trying them and finding a style you like, I think. And we hope that the style, I'm really lucky that I make a style that I like. And I hope you like it also. I'm not trying to pick a blend that I hope somebody will like. I actually make it for me, and then I hope everybody else likes it too.
I think the key that I was trying to get out was that Chardonnay grape is greatly influenced by where it's grown, the type of soil, the climate, and all of those have a different effect on the particular grape. So while it is Chardonnay, it is coming from someplace else. It may be called something else, but it's a very, very adaptive grape to making different styles of wine. So yeah, we always are trying other people's wines from other parts of the world and in California and in Napa, just to see what everybody else is doing. And in a small area, there are so many different flavors and tastes you get in different bottles.
Chardonnay is a very great
this
variety.
moving because we've got two other wines to taste. But before we get on to the Pinot Noir, I have one more question about the Chardonnay, Todd, and then if you can move us on to the Carneros Pinot so that we have enough time to taste the other two wines that we're planning to taste today. So Steve Gambino from New Jersey, he says that he has a 2005 Frank Family Reserve Chardonnay. He's asking, will it age or should he open it soon?
I'm thinking that the 5 might be a little older. It's going to have a lot of caramel, a little more oxidized. I think our Reserve Chardonnay, I had the 15 last night with dinner and it was really youthful. Had the 14 last week, youthful. The 5 at 15 years, maybe a little long in the tooth, I would say. Try it. I mean, if you own it, so open it at home, and, you know, and try it. If you like it, great. But I'm thinking that goes to a bigger question on ageability of wines. All wines age differently. They're like us. We have bell curves. You know, we start out as infants, get up to our prime, and then we start sliding down the backside. Wines do the same thing. I hate when people have a whole bunch of wines and they've gone over the hill. So please drink your wines. The 5, it'd be interesting to try. I haven't had it. I don't think I've, usually I don't keep them that long for 15 years for the Chardonnays.
Pinot.
Great.
Let's pour some of that. Note we're using separate bottles.
That's because they're single-size servings. All right, so sibling, a lot of the discussion we just had with the Chardonnay, we're going to have with this Pinot Noir. The region is identical. The grower is pretty much identical. different blocks. So you could have 5 acres of Chardonnay and next to it 5 acres of Pinot. You may have different aspects to it, but roughly speaking, very similar region. Again, as the Chardonnay was 100% Chardonnay, 100% Pinot Noir. Again, the home is Burgundy, so a lot of similar conversations. Obviously, with white wines, we press the juice away from the skins as soon as possible. I think that's a big key for us, to extract the juice away from the skins, where you add more of the harsh characters. With red wines, we want to do kind of the opposite. We want to crush them, as we say, destem them into tanks, and then we macerate. We start making like tea. And the art, the skill, the science comes from how long do you master. Do you want light tea or you want dark tea? And each variety is different. Each vineyard's a little different. Pinot Noir is more of a lighter red wine. And for this blend too, it's the Carneros blend. Again, crosses both sides of the county. A third new French oak also in its fermentation after pressing, where the Chardonnay ferments in the barrel, the red wines ferment in tanks, and then as soon as it's pressed, we let it finish fermenting in the barrels and go through that malolactic process also that we talked about in the barrel. And again, smell it, taste it. I hope you're enjoying these at home or similar wines or other wines. Winemaking's around the world is pretty similar. There's some details that are different, but we're all trying to get to the same spot, usually making a delicious wine.
And in the Pinots, what you'll find here is, not to talk about specifics, but you should be picking up the red fruit flavors in this, as opposed to the darker fruit flavors that you'll pick up in a Cabernet.
And here
Todd, sorry, I have a question. Well, obviously the geography differentiates our Pinot style from the red Burgundies in Burgundy, but maybe you can talk about those differences. I mean, when a lot of people who are very partial to the Pinot Noir grape think of the red Burgundies, and what is it that makes our Pinot Noir different?
Great, and that's the key word, is different. We're not trying to be the same. It started there. They have great history. Those wines are fantastic. If we're very different climate, very different soils. We are blessed with California sunshine. We are very spoiled. We almost have to farm to protect it a lot. I mean, a little sunscreen action, meaning, we have to worry about the sun and the heat a little bit. In Burgundy, the complete opposite. A very cool region, very north. So, they need all the sun that they can get. So they're a little more acidity driven. Our wines are a little more fruit driven, but it's the same from sparkling wine, Champagne, Burgundy, Chardonnay, Burgundy, Pinot. We're not trying to make French wines. We've learned a lot from the French. We respect the French. We're trying to do what California does best. And we have an abundance of this great fruit. So we're not trying to hide it at all.
To that point, when you visit Napa, you'll notice that our vines grow very tall. And in fact, the grapes on the vines are generally about waist high. If you go to France, their vines are grown very close to the ground, and you see a lot of gravel on the ground. That's because we have a giant amount of sun. And in fact, we put the leaves up to shade the grapes. The French need every drop of sunlight they get. So they want to grow closer to the ground to even get the bounce off the pebble radiated heat. They need the heat to develop the grapes. We go on the other side, and it's in abundance. We're actually shading as much as we can to let air through and sun through, but just enough. Now, we do it that way because it's easier for the pickers, quite honestly, to harvest and pick without bending over as much as they would have to. In France, they're on their knees trying to pick. And it just shows you the difference in the climates in the two countries.
Todd, Tracy McFall from Danville. Hi, Tracy. Tracy would like to know, what is your favorite recent year for Pinot Noir?
Well, I hate to say this because this one's drinking pretty good. You know, in the wine industry, we have a cliche. You know, the favorite one's the one in my glass. This one's pretty good, and I think this has some longevity to it too. So, and the growing season was great. So it's going to be hard to beat this one, but that's the fun thing about the challenge and self-competition, I think, to try to do better every year. And we say, you know, winemakers don't have erasers. So once we pick the crop, it's ours, and we have to do it right. So, and we only, this is my, I don't know, over 35th vintage, and that's all I get. You know, I don't get to do it twice a year. I get to do it once a year. So this 18 is drinking delicious.
What vintage is it with us?
This 17 completed. I'm going to be at 18th vintage here.
I knew the answer. I just wanted you to say it.
A good thing I got that one right. Yeah. So where were we? Harvesting. We were talking about that. I'll throw into a little bit of wine. The wine industry prides itself on handcrafted, romance, nostalgia, but we've got to change a little bit. We've got to get mechanized, and we're trying to learn as much as possible about this as we go. So when we have to, we know about it. Chardonnay, I still really need hand-picked fruit. But with reds, I am going with some machine picking. The new generation of harvesters are fantastic. They have sorters on them. It's the same equipment that we have at the winery, so it makes sense. So we're learning and we're experimenting on the crush pad. The crush pad is our area where we receive the fruit and destem it. We have an optical sorter. It's used in all kinds of food processing. Wine industry is a little late to the game, but it's a series of cameras and computers and air nozzles that if the fruit isn't perfect, it'll separate it. So a lot of fun stuff happening now. Again, the harvesters at Winston Hill, you can't see, but I'm looking out up on the vineyard. The harvesters wouldn't work on a hillside like this, but on a nice flat level valley floor vineyard for red wines, I think they're fantastic.
And one of the reasons we have to go there, as everybody's going to have to go there, is because of the labor shortage and the shortage not only in getting people available in a full economy, but the shortage of people who are willing to do those jobs, which are really back-breaking jobs that many people are not willing to do. And so as the valley gets replanted, it's being replanted with enough room between the rows so that these harvesters in the future will be able to go through. The way a lot of Napa is now planted, you couldn't just bring a harvester in because of the size and how it reaches out and touches the vines. But as things are being replanted, people are thinking ahead. It will always be a problem on hillside because it's so steep and you need flat areas for it really to be steady and mobile. Next, shall we go on to the Cabernet?
Well,
You have another question.
Tracy McFall just wanted to know that she thinks you have a sense of humor, Todd, and we know that you do. Yes, we should move on to the Cabernet, but I do want you to know, I've had a few comments here from viewers who are really curious about our Zinfandel, and even though we're not tasting Zinfandel today, just a heads up, Todd, maybe you can keep a few minutes toward the end here, since we're going to only 1 o'clock, 4 p.m. Eastern time, just to chat about Zinfandel, and maybe we can bring that into our next virtual tasting. Okay. Not everyone was able to get the Pinot Noir at their local retailers, so they're curious about Zin, but we can talk about that maybe towards the end.
I'll briefly cover Zin now, because that's where I'd pour it. I'd pour it after the Pinot and before the Cab. Anyways, let's talk about it. Another one of our family members, the Zin. Very little's planted in the proper Napa Valley, the corridor. We find ours out in a sub-appellation called Childs Valley, a little east of the valley floor. We have 2 little blocks planted in Rutherford. We had, and then we buy from some Calistoga fruit, St. Helena, Childs Valley. We planted a few years ago at our S&J vineyard, which we'll talk about more when we get to Cabernet. So it's a true blend, and we put a little splash of Petit Syrah in there for some structure and some color. And again, probably more on the rare side. It's all French oak there too. If we have open top fermenters available, we'll do punch downs. We're not trying to make a port style wine. We're not trying to make a super high alcohol wine. It's not light by any means, but we're hoping that you enjoy it with food and over the whole meal, and not just a glass for the night. So again, it follows the family theme of balance and fruit. A lot of raspberry and a little spice from the barrel, and then a little structure from the Petit Syrah. With Petit Syrah, if you add too much, it'll become Petit Syrah pretty quickly. And we're trying to make Zinfandel, not Petit Syrah, because we make a Petit Syrah that we enjoy. So we're able to make 2 different varieties instead of both person.
If you like Zinfandel, anything that you put on the grill, anything, it's perfect with that. Once ribs or chicken wings or pork chops or almost anything on the grill caramelizes, it's fantastic with Zinfandel. Leslie and my joke always is it's a 2-bottle dinner when we barbecue, 1 bottle for me while we're barbecuing, and 1 bottle with dinner after we take it off the grill. But it's a perfect match for anything that hits a fire.
So who gets marinated?
I get marinated usually.
That's good.
Very funny. I just want to interrupt. We have reached our capacity on Zoom, and some people have had an issue signing into Zoom to be able to watch this, but we are also streaming this live on Facebook. So for those of you who are sending us notes saying that our friends can't get in because they're reached capacity, if they have Facebook, they can watch us live, and we will be rebroadcasting this through our website, www.frankfamilyvineyards.com, which will take you to the YouTube channel, and you can watch it all and do your tasting at your time, on your time, at your convenience. So just pass along to your friends out there who may be having some issues getting into Zoom. But for those of you who are out there, keep sending your questions. I've got a few more, but we'll get to them. Okay, Todd, back to you.
Sounds like we should buy stock in Zoom on Monday. Anyway, moving on to Cabernet.
Okay, we're jumping in now. We're switching vintages to the 2016, which is our current release. There's a good contrast there. They're Burgundian varietals here, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Typically, rule of thumb, spend about a year in the winery, barrels and such, go to bottle, and then are released about this time. Both these wines you'll see on the cusp probably of the Chardonnay Pinot again. In some markets you still may have the 17, and some you'll be on the 18. So we're on the cusp. Where Cabernet spends a full 2 years in the barrel and then a year in the bottle. So it's a little richer, can handle that, a little more tannins, a little more phenolics. Those are the astringent, and our job is to not make them bitter, but the structure components of the wine. So this is the 16, and it's a coincidence here, but the 16 growing season was very much like the 18 average. It was great. We got to pick when we wanted to. Think of it as everybody's job. If something comes into your world and makes you make a decision and you're not ready, it adds stress to the level, or it's not perfect. 16 and 18 were pretty much you picked when you wanted to, which was great. So these are similar years. 16 followed 15, which was a very short crop wise. Mother Nature didn't give us a lot of quantity, where 16 kind of made up for it. So it was a big year. Again, same philosophy in the oak regime on this. It's about a third new. It's all French oak, all barrels from the Bordeaux region. And this is Cabernet Sauvignon, but there's about 10% Merlot in this wine, and a little Petit Verdot and a little Cabernet Franc also. Fermented, takes about 2 weeks, pump overs, punch downs. But again, this goes through that optical sorter. There is some machine harvested fruit in here. We started trials probably 5 years before this wine. So we've been looking at that. And then go back to the vineyards. This is where our vineyards play a big role. From where we're at, it's about a par 5 to the Benjamin Vineyard, which is Rutherford Valley floor. There's a foundation. And then over the hill, I'm pointing because I'm looking out here, but you guys can't see this, kind of east on the eastern flank of Atlas Peak is our S&J Vineyard up in Capel Valley. So high elevation, more extreme than it is here in Rutherford. We get Merlot from northern Napa, working with them for a long time, the De Luis family, and fruit all the way up to Calistoga. So this is a true valley blend.
Let me jump in and just talk about the 17.
Let me just interrupt you, Rich, which I have a habit of doing sometimes. It's called marriage. So I have a question from James, just James, who's tuned in with us today, and he's got an interesting question. Are your cabs all free run or a blend of free run and press?
Great question. So this Napa Valley has press in it. Our vineyard designates are all free run. So Winston Hill, Patriarch, any of the wine club wines, Calistoga, Mount Veeder, etc., would all be free run. This wine will have some press in it, but we keep it separate. So we again, goes back to the same philosophy in Chardonnay that I stole from the Champagne region. We do the same thing: press cuts, and more press cuts. We treat it separately, then we can deal with it, and then we'll blend it back. So so this wine will have press wine in it.
And Greg Lutz, he's from Madison, Wisconsin, where our granddaughter goes to school. What makes the Rutherford Cabernet, with the Rutherford Reserve Cabernet, so special? Well, location.
Yeah, I think as you move up the chain on Cabernets, it becomes more and more dependent on particular vineyards, particular portions of vineyards, whether you enjoy hillside versus valley floor, whether you prefer hillside that's facing west, so you have the sun all day long, or if it's facing east where it falls the opposite way. It's all a matter of taste. I find that, to me, hillside grapes, southwest facing, gives you a great picture and a great ability to grow great grapes because they're sitting in the perfect condition. Hillside is great because it forces the vines to be a little more stressed, as water, when it falls on the top of the hill, obviously drains all the way to the bottom, and roots have to go deeper to find water. When they go deeper, they pick up water that's been surrounded by rock for years, a little more minerality. When you get grapes on the valley floor, it's easier. Those vines go down, they go down a few feet and turn up because water's easy to get. So I find that Cabernet produces wines I enjoy more if they're off of hillside vines, hillside vineyards in certain locations. That doesn't mean that something on the valley floor or on the west side of the valley isn't as good or better. It's all a matter of taste. But if you control your own vineyards and you own your own vineyards, you can decide what rootstock you put in, what clone you put on the vine, how you farm it, how much water you give it. You make every decision because it's your own vineyard. And you can grow it for the amount of quantity that you want. So you decide how much you cut back and how much grapes you want to leave on the vine. And all of that comes into play with what Todd is making. So as you move up the chain of better wines, it's probably closer watched. There's always, I mean, I don't want to make an analogy, but if you're home and you have a number of rose bushes, one always grows better than the others. So that would be the one you would also use for your reserve wines at one level or another. And it's a matter of care and what control that you have over the grapes.
All right. So, Todd, I have a couple of winemaking questions, and these are good ones because we throw around terms like press, and we were talking earlier about malolactic fermentation, and these are things, these are sort of, you know, wine geek terms that, you know, those who are really, you know, make a point of knowing about this stuff may know. But for most of us, these are terms that, oh, press and malolactic fermentation and barrel selection and you know, let's narrow this down a little bit and talk in layman terms. And I think this is a great question from Jay Schuyler. What is press?
So it's a restaurant in St. Helena.
It's doing curbside pickup with a really great fried chicken sandwich.
So press, I mean, we've all seen them probably in the, you know, press is, all we're doing is pressing the juice out of so grapes have juice in them, they're fruit, and we're pressing that juice out.
When we come in, we dump them on top of the sorter and go through that step.
Okay, okay.
And then it moves over.
So yes, so the fruit's harvested. We sort the fruit before it goes to the press. But bottom line, we're squeezing the juice. I think that's what they need to know. We're squeezing the juice out of the grape. And that's what pressing is doing. And as a grape, think of it as a ball. Obviously, it's not perfectly round, but it's a ball. There's the skin and the seed in the middle. The fruit in the middle of that is the purest fruit. Near the skins and the seeds have the more harsher compounds in it. So our job is to squeeze that as gently as possible to get the purest fruit out. And when I say press cut, the harder you squeeze, now we're getting close to the seeds and we're squeezing the juice from the skins. So we're keeping that separate. That's kind of the ballpark, hopefully easily explained.
Okay, and then Mark Foglietta, he has the question about when you're talking about the use of French oak barrels. When you say a third new, do you mean you move the wine from older to newer barrels or vice versa? And this is a really good question, Mark.
Great. So the wine is going to stay in that barrel. So for example, if we have 100 barrels, 33 are brand new, 33 are from the year before, and 33 are from 2 years ago, approximately, obviously. And so they'll stay in that barrel for white wines now, and Pinot Noir. I'm talking, we don't rack those. So they'll stay in that third, and then we'll blend that proportion back. With Cabernet, we do a similar thing, but we, over time, over 2 years, we're racking. I'm saying a term that may not make sense. We're taking the wine out of barrel. Wines settle over time. Think of your apple juice, your natural apple juice in your refrigerator, or your orange juice. You have to shake it before you drink it. Wines do the same thing, but we're not shaking it. We're gonna decant it, is a better way, and pour it so the sediment, the heavy, we call them lees, are left behind. And we do that several times with Cabernet. And then we'll start blending that 1/3 with the 2/3 over a couple years. So they start, think of it as a blending, a marriage, a melding of flavors.
Todd, Kelly Drucker has asked us a question about our Winston Hill red wine blend. Says it's amazing, and what makes this blend so special, and is it available for sale? Literally my favorite wine. That's from Kelly Drucker in New Jersey. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, so again, here we go with that. I think, Leslie, you alluded to it earlier, location, location, location. Rich and I are sitting here, and there's a big window here, and we're looking at Winston Hill. And arguably, and I'm trying to be unbiased, but top 5 Cabernet vineyards in Napa Valley. So I'm fortunate to work with the fruit. So it's location, it's location, it's location. Now we get to blend with that because it's a red wine blend, but it's still predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, but it has Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Franc in it, all grown on this property. Anyway, if you come out to Napa, I would drive up and down the valley. You'll see this vineyard. It's stunning, and that's why it's fantastic. I kind of joke that I just get out of the way and don't screw it up. You know, those wines get a little more new oak, as I talked about earlier. The stronger the fruit, the more new oak. So Winston Hill's 50 to 75%. We have a wine, Patriarch, that's 100% Cabernet from the Heart Block. It gets 75 to 100% new oak, depending on the vintage. So this is an exceptional spot, and that's important.
Okay. So Nicole Tucker wants to know, in your opinion, what is the best year for Cabernet of the last decade?
Sure. You know, again, we're in that spoiled thing. I could almost say, what are my, I could easily name my least favorites, but so what is this? It's 20. So we got 12 was pretty dang fantastic. 12 was the first year where we got a lot of rain in 11, and it kind of threw us for a loop, and then 12 came to be one of these perfect years. So I'm excited about the 12. And talk about aging, you know, it's Cabernet, so it's going to age more than 8 years. But if you own several bottles of the 12, pop one of those, see how you like it. And it's 8 years now. And see if you say it's, oh, too fresh still, great, let some run. If you say, oh no, this is where I like it, then you know to start drinking it. So it's a personal decision on aging the wines. 12 is fantastic. 15 was a very low crop year, so very concentrated year. 16 you'll see here. I think it's got a lot of energy in it. Now this is one wine, we make several wines. 17 was a very hot year. We had heat spikes. It was a very a unique year. 18 you're going to see is very plush. It's going to be very similar to the 16, if not more plush. 14 was great. It's one of those things, and we did this on the last cruise. I think we were all on. And hello to everybody who's been on our cruises, and I'm glad everybody's healthy and we got off a week early. We ask the question all the time. We pour several vintages and raise your hand which one you like, and it's uncanny how it's equally split. So it becomes personal preference.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment.
Sorry, Rich, go ahead, and then I'm gonna ask a few more questions from our panelists.
Go ahead. I was going to talk about the 17 really quickly. Can I do that, darling?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, 17 was a
we have 6 minutes till we're done our broadcast. 6 minutes.
Vintage, because we had fire in Napa Valley on October 8th. And many people talked about that vintage because of the fire. Everything picked before October 8th was in the barn, as they say, before anything happened. We picked some grapes after October 8th, as did others. Once we made the wine and tasted it, we thought that possibly it could be some smoke taint in there. So with Frank Family Wine, we sold off 17,000 cases worth of Cabernet that we did not make, and guaranteed that there wouldn't be one grape in any Frank Family Wine that was harvested after October 8th. So if you're looking at vintages as they start to come out, understand that there is no way that smoke taint could affect anything that's in any one of our bottles. Now I'll be quiet, Leslie, and it's back to you.
Thanks, Rich. We're just getting a lot of questions here, and we have 5 more minutes, and we want to launch a quick poll as well. So I'm going to do that. This is a quick poll about what we've done today, and what wines. First of all, do you like what we're doing? Is there a time preference? What wines are you interested in? And what is your, how would you like to connect with us? So there's a poll that I've just launched right now if our viewers today would like to participate. But a few questions that I have. One is from Jillian Sheldon in Los Angeles. Jillian just received her wine club shipment. Thank you. Question for Todd and Rich. How do you know when you have a particularly good vintage? And someone else, I just want to say that Dave and Cindy Carter from Danville are drinking the 2012 Winston Hill right now, and they say it's fantastic and they want more. That's just a comment. But the question from Jillian, how do you know when you have a good vintage?
Well, before I answer that question, I see there's a poll here. Don't choose Saturday afternoon next time. Choose Friday. How do you know there's a new vintage? Mother Nature tells you a lot if it's a good growing season. If we're not having rain or heat spikes, that growing season from June through October dictates a lot of that. And then we're making the wine, and we can all predict we're going to have great vintages, but until we get it to the barrel, which is usually by Christmas the following year, I know to say, wow, we did it, or as we kind of joke in our department, wow, we get to keep our job another year. So usually we can find out then. It's about concentration, it's about fruit, it's about balance. There's all these variables, and our job, think of it as teachers or parents. When the student's pretty good, you don't have to do a lot. But you got that C student, you want to raise them to a B. You got a B, you want to raise to an A. The A's are easy. So if you have a lot of A's, and if Mother Nature helps you, or the location helps you, and you have a lot of A's, you just shepherd them. If you've got B's and C's, you need to work them and get them up to that level. And so if you got a lot of A's, then you know right away you're going to have a pretty good year.
That's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go back to our poll results. Am I ending the poll here? Yes, because we have 2 minutes. So end poll. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants today, in case you haven't been able to figure that out. This is our first virtual tasting, and some of us are not that tech savvy, and we're getting used to the new platforms. The new that's not so new, actually. Zoom was like, what, 2011? We're slow learners. All right, I'm going to share the results, and it looks like, all right, which wines would you like us to focus on for our next virtual tasting? The majority of you say Cabernet Sauvignon, and well, close second is sparkling wine, so that's great. What time should we host our next virtual tasting? Should it be, sorry Todd, Saturday afternoon, 70%. You're outnumbered. Guess what you're doing on Saturdays? As long as we're all holed up and practicing the social distancing, what have you got to do on Saturday, right?
Well, we could get out and play golf, but that's a different story.
It's okay.
Yeah, on a normal Saturday maybe, but the world is anything but normal right now. Okay, so what are some other ways that you would like to connect, that you would like us to connect with you? And the majority of you say a virtual vineyard tour. Okay, in the vineyard, come on. Now, this is my virtual background, which obviously we have pruned the vineyard since this photograph was taken, but you know, it kind of worked for today's purposes. So yes, the vines don't quite look like that in the real world, but they looked like that not too long ago. So, so a virtual vineyard tour, that wins out, and then all of the above. So I guess that means that 51% of you, oh, sorry, 51% of you say all of the above, which means a one-on-one virtual tasting with Frank family, a virtual vineyard tour, and an Instagram or Facebook Live. So I guess that means they like us. They really, really like us. What can I say?
All right, well,
thank you everybody for tuning in. We are we're so happy that you participated with us today and drank along. And again, this is just a fun, informative tasting, and we look forward to the days where we can see you in person, but that's not possible right now as we're all trying to be safe. And so enjoy wine. We appreciate your support. Believe me, we appreciate it. Not a day goes by that we're not thankful for all of you. And thank you to Todd, and thank you to Rich, and cheers.
Thank you,
Leslie. Next time.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoyed chatting with you. Hope to see you soon.
This was great. We'll do it more.